Hey guys, I'm ZeldaMaster and welcome to another Breath of the Wild discussion video. This one's going to be a little bit different. Instead of talking to just myself, I have a good friend with me. Why don't you go introduce yourself?
Hey guys, it's HMK. I'm here on ZeldaMaster's channel. I'm so ready to talk Breath of the Wild. Man, I'm even more ready for the game to come out. So hopefully, come March, it will be out.
Yeah, hopefully no more delays, because we've had plenty of delays.
This game is the most delayed Zelda game in existence.
But it does have good reason, right? I mean, the game looks so much different than any other Zelda game. So, what are your opinions so far on the changes of Breath of the Wild?
Man, when I played Breath of the Wild, when we played Breath of the Wild at E3, it felt like such a different game, but at the same time, it still retained its identity as a Zelda game, which is something I really appreciate. Because, it's really easy to, get a completely different game and just slap Zelda on it, but it isn't really that case. We still have some recognizable features, some recognizable gameplay elements from past Zelda games, but Breath of the Wild, for the most part, is a breath of fresh air. No pun intended. I did intend that pun, but,
yeah.
It's such a great game. We have so many different gameplay elements. Link can finally jump freely now. We haven't seen that since Zelda 2. And now we have all these different weapons which we can equip on the fly, and every single weapon, to our knowledge, can break, which is something that hasn't really been, explored in Zelda games. Yeah, sure, our shields can break, but never our weapons. So that really has a huge survival element to the game, and it's something that's, it's all about survival in Breath of the Wild. It's not about, going to save this land. Yeah, sure, we had to save Hyrule, but at this point in Breath of the Wild, Hyrule is, basically fucked already. So it's very weird, the direction in how this game is gonna flow story-wise and gameplay-wise, but I'm so excited for it because it all works so well together, and it's something that, proves that Nintendo can accomplish almost anything with their properties, especially a game like Zelda.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you say that, because I'm with you. With all of these new changes they're adding, I'm really excited for it. With jumping, the whole survival thing that you have to do, with even hunting down animals, killing them, picking up their whatever they drop. It's so interesting. But a lot of people, which I've noticed, when they've seen Breath of the Wild at E3 and all of the gameplay of it, they're not fans of it, because it looks a lot like games like Skyrim. Games like, just open world survival games. There are plenty out there. Far Cry, there's just so many out there, and that's kind of the norm of big expansive world type of games, games with huge overworlds. So I don't know, is it a bad thing that Zelda is adapting to that new way of gaming, or is it Nintendo is finally jumping on the bandwagon and being okay, let's just kind of update Zelda with all of the stuff new games have, the more, I guess, you're given more options pretty much, and you're able to do it in your own style. Being able to build your own armor set and weapon set, and every playthrough is going to be so much different. It's cool, but it does not sound like Zelda or any Nintendo game at all. So is that a bad thing, you think, or what?
I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, because Nintendo, I commend the fact that Nintendo's finally taking the initiative in order to update or I would say upgrade their franchises. But at the same time, when we look at this question, we have to ask ourselves, is this going to be the future of Zelda? Reggie Fils-Aimé, Eiji Aonuma, and Shigeru Miyamoto, they said they're breaking down the conventions of Zelda in Breath of the Wild. But is that Zelda's future? We're not entirely sure. We have to, it depends on how well this game is received once it comes out. I understand how people are, I would say, skeptical and not really truly accepting this game, Breath of the Wild, as a true Zelda game. But we've played it, so I'm pretty sure, out of everyone who's seen it, we should know better than anyone how this game feels, how it plays. Yes, it does feel different, but at the same time, I keep on saying over and over again, this game does feel like a Zelda game. It's just, the next evolution of Zelda, because Zelda has always fit a type of mold since Ocarina of Time, and that has been one of the biggest arguments on the planet. Is that something that we should continue? Is that something that still works? People say yes, people say no.
But it has been altered throughout the years. We've always received slight differences, and they've never been complaints. So when you do think about it, what Nintendo is doing isn't bad at all, but they just did it on a much bigger scheme of things. When you think about it, in Wind Waker, the difference from other Zelda games was the graphics, which was hated on by many people, and the traveling mechanic, but that was about it. There was nothing else. It was still a Zelda in its core, even down to like picking up an item, Link would show it to you on screen. Like that's been in every single Zelda game besides, I don't even know if there has been a Zelda game where Link doesn't do that. So it's crazy to think about that. That's even removed as well. So Nintendo's just kind of, yeah, when you think about it, they are upgrading Zelda, but to old school fans, they might not be a fan of that. I personally am an old school fan, and I am, but I don't really think many people can agree, but I'm sure you do agree, right? Like with me on everything, because so far what you've said is agreeing with that.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we also have to look at the approach that Nintendo's doing. Well, I mean, what made them want to make Breath of the Wild this way? They're taking a lot, and I mean a lot, of inspirations from the first Zelda game, you know, trying to break away the inhibitors of, you know, going a set path, finding things a certain way. They're taking that away from what Zelda has, you know, has been known to be. But now they're going back to the roots. They're having Link, you know, explore this world of Hyrule, almost having little to no knowledge of where to go and stuff, and, you know, building your own adventure, building your own legend. That is the Legend of Zelda. That's how it started, and, you know, it has evolved from that and still retained that sort of identity throughout the games up until now. But Breath of the Wild seems to be revisiting that, you know, that old way of exploration way back when on the NES, and that's great. And at the same time, that also that's a way to, you know, reward players in exploring. Not only do you get weapons, you find all these new things, items, bows, arrows, and stuff like that, because there's so much stuff to collect in Breath of the Wild, and what we've seen in E3 just scratches the surface. Not only do we get all that, but according to the developers, that's how you figure out what happened to the story, because, I mean, the story itself, as a Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, Hyrule is gone. Hyrule fell to ruin. Why? How did this happen? What is the Calamity Ganon? Where is everybody? You know, the way we find that out is by exploring the world, and that's
when you
totally
say
optional.
When you say that, it sounds like you just summarized Dark Souls, which, for those who don't know, as I mentioned millions of times, I'm a huge fan of that series, and the game does not tell you a story. And nor will you find NPCs if you are not looking for them. They can completely just pass you throughout the whole story. The whole game, you can just avoid the whole story and all of the NPCs, which is scary to think about. Because in Breath of the Wild, like, I wouldn't really want too much of, like, you know, just explore and we're not going to tell you anything. I still want it to be a story-based game. I mean, Zelda has always had, you know, heavy story in its plot, so, like, them removing it sounds really different. And plus, Nintendo, I'll be honest, I can't really give them too much credit for making a game like that, because they did do A Link Between Worlds, which was supposed to have the open exploration feel as well, in Lorule, which, you played it, of course, right?
Right.
I don't have to ask. Okay. But there was so much hand-holding in that game, I did not feel like it was an open exploration game at all. It did not, like, and I feel like Nintendo has been doing that even with Skyward Sword. They just do not, like, let go of your hand pretty much throughout the whole game, telling people what to do, because Nintendo's trying to cater to every type of gamer, to where if you're really bad, you can still beat it without a guide, and I don't want that. So with the game that's meant to be super exploration based, how are they going to be able to do that without holding your hand? Hopefully Nintendo does revert back to Zelda 1, because if you played Zelda 1 now and you've never played it before, it's tough. Like, it's
a hard game, yeah.
It's unreal. Like, I have no idea how people play. Like, when I played it, I'm like, oh, so you just bomb, you go behind this waterfall, you know, bomb this wall, this and that. But, like, how are you figuring this out? I'm like, well, I just knew from a kid, honestly, but I had to look up, I used to look up game facts and stuff when I was younger on, like, all of that. Now we just have Let's Plays, but still, we have so much to, like, look up things. Like, we have the internet, we have guides, we have all of this, to where we don't need as much hand-holding. So I think maybe Nintendo should stray away from that, maybe come out with a guide on release. I mean, they do have Prima guides on release, so yeah, I really hope it does leave you in, like, nothingness and just to have to figure out on your own. But I highly doubt that will come from Nintendo with what we've been receiving lately from them. So I'm kind of, unsure. And
I feel you. I feel you. But what my response is going to be, I'm glad that you brought up a notion like, this is similar to Dark Souls and stuff like that. I've heard that argument to so many times before. But the thing is with Dark Souls, for the most part, Dark Souls, the series, and as individual games have been its own self-contained story. You just go into Dark Souls and that's it. You have to go and explore and then figure out the story for yourself in Dark Souls, right?
Yeah.
The difference between Dark Souls and Breath of the Wild is that Breath of the Wild is the latest game in Zelda. It is part of a rich franchise that we know and love, and there are so many things that we recognize. Hyrule, the Koroks, Link himself, the legend itself. So going into a game that we know so much about from past games, of Hyrule and its legend, for it to be like this, we want to know what happened. Dark Souls doesn't have that factor. Because Dark Souls, it starts out that way. But for Breath of the Wild, we knew about all this stuff. The Temple of Time is in ruins. Why? We recognize that from Ocarina of Time and other games. So why does this happen? It has that factor, that nostalgia factor, that will push us to figure out what happened. Especially,
no, that's very true. Yeah, you're right. I completely forgot how this world is filled with Hylia River, freaking there's a lot of Hylia areas as well, like Mount Hylia, I believe. I never seen games has Zelda ever had a game where it was known as Hylia instead of Hyrule? No, Lake Hylia. Lake Hylia.
Oh yeah, that was the only one. That was the
only one. So it's so weird. I mean, I can't wait to see how everything looks, and if it is supposed to be a reimagine of Ocarina of Time, destroyed with the Temple of Time. That'd be awesome, but I'm kind of unsure if the Temple of Time Nintendo has been teasing us with is the same one from Ocarina of Time.
I have a theory that I really don't believe it is. A lot of people want to argue that, but I mean, there's so many differences.
It looks nothing like it from the inside, at least.
Yeah, the architecture is completely different from the inside. I feel that it's a little bit bigger than the Temple of Time in Ocarina of Time, and also the surrounding set of factors of the Temple of Time in Breath of the Wild are different. And remember, the Temple of Time in Ocarina of Time, we saw Death Mountain in the distance behind it. We don't see that in Breath of the Wild. And I'm pretty sure, for a mountain to just disappear, that's going to take thousands of years in order to accomplish.
Yeah, no, and Death Mountain seems to be in the game still. So if it is Ocarina, if it's somehow after the Ocarina of Time timeline and is in the same Hyrule, it's clearly going to be a different Temple of Time, most likely.
Right.
But I mean, we're not here to theorize about that.
Exactly, yeah.
I just randomly brought that up because it's just crazy to think about how, we're going to still be seeing similar things, but it's going to be played out way differently. And that is actually kind of exciting to think about. So even though, Zelda is breaking the mold with Breath of the Wild, it's still going to carry so much references like the Korok and, all of that in the game. So it's not, the Sheikah, but the thing is, the Sheikah, we don't really know much about them, so this is going to be super new to us, and to me that
I'm
seems really
so
exciting.
ready for Breath of the Wild. That's my number one thing I'm so excited for Breath of the Wild, is learning more about the Sheikah, because man, this game 30 years later, we're finally going to figure out what is up with with this clan, Oh, I'm so ready for that, dude. I'm up.
The Sheikah has always been Sheik has always been such an interesting character. For Zelda Disguise, I was never impressed by Impa, honestly, until Hyrule Warriors. And Skyward Sword, she was interesting, I'll be honest, but I feel like the Sheikah for what they are and how cool they are, they were never given enough attention. I know they're a secretive tribe, but come on, Nintendo, we need more info on them. So I'm really excited to see what they're about in this game, especially with over 100 shrines to take on.
Right, and then over 100 monks we're gonna see die before our eyes over. That's another thing that kind of over.
That also kind of has me, unsure about the game's gameplay, because if we have over 100 shrines, and we've seen the shrines, they're not that long, but those were early game shrines.
Right.
They could just replace temples, and that's not something I'd want.
Right,
to be honest.
But I read somewhere that temples will be returning. It's just that we don't know how many.
Okay.
That's I read somewhere around the time of Easter. It's the temples that we all come to know in the Legend of Zelda will return, but you'll be able to tackle them from any direction. In any order, in any direction, which sounds very, very interesting. But I want to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot to offer when you say that, because it, like, let's say, yeah, it just doesn't make much sense from like a standpoint of playing previous Zelda games. Like, how is that gonna work? They've never done this before, so it is interesting. I mean, overall, I feel like we can never judge the game for what it is until we actually play it. And what I've played so far, I can personally say that this is going to be the best Zelda game, and it's going to deliver on everything I've wanted for years, but, you know, I'm unsure, to be completely honest.
The only problem I have with Breath of the Wild from playing at E3, and I'm pretty sure they're going to fix it, is please, Nintendo, I'm begging you, 1080p stable 30 frames per second.
Yeah,
that's
stable
all
30,
I'm
no,
asking.
60. We need 60.
I look, at 60 will be amazing, but personally, I don't need 60. Zelda has always been 30 for me. Breath of the Wild
Have
looks
you
like...
seen the landscape? Like, I can just make time-lapse videos. Like, you know the time-lapse that's on the Japanese site?
Yeah.
Have you seen it? Just the background?
Yeah.
I literally stare at that. Like, I just have it playing in the background from time to time. It's like 24 minutes, a minute per hour for the day, which is really cool how the day and night cycle is like that. I don't know what Twilight Princess's was. Was it a minute per hour as well?
I don't know, but it never mattered. Like, Twilight Princess, man, that was like the one miss in that game, like the day and night cycle in that game.
That was the worst thing in the game. That was my biggest issue. Twilight Princess is my favorite game, but Breath of the Wild is going to destroy it when it comes to day and night cycle. I mean, you can sit in front of a little campfire and have time pass. That's so awesome. Like, that is amazing. But I don't know. Like, Breath of the Wild definitely changing up Zelda, but I'm, you know, reassured that it's going to be awesome. I feel good about it, and so do you. So I guess, like, in conclusion, we're not afraid about the changes. I know a lot of you guys are, though, like, who are watching. So let me know what you guys think of it in general, but I guess we'll end it off here. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, HMK, for joining me.
Hey.
Yeah, and if you guys have more, you know, suggestions on things you want to hear us talk about, let me know. I could invite HMK again, as well as other people. So let me know what you guys think in general of Breath of the Wild and what we talked about, as well as the video in the comments. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.